Hello, welcome back aboard USS Cod here in the crew mess room, and I am Cod Director Paul Ferrace, and we're going to talk about an interesting feature of USS Cod. But first, let me just tell a little story. On the 7th Patrol, the summer of 1945, Admiral Lockwood was very concerned that the submarines, which had been the silent service for much of the war, were going to lose the PR battle after the war, after the victory, because there were virtually no photos, color movies of the silent service. So with the war obviously winding down, cameramen were placed aboard submarines which were going out what turned out to be their very last patrols. Cod was one of those lucky boats to be involved in what Admiral Flecky called Project 3. And basically, we had cameraman Norm Jensen on board. He had been on another submarine. I believe he was perhaps trained as a motor machinist mate, but he knew the how to use a camera, and a still camera and a film camera. So their mission, this cadre of Navy photographers, cameramen, were given the mission to record a complete Navy attack, a submarine attack. And it turns out that never really happened. Number one, the film that they used was beautiful, rich colored Kodachrome, but it had an ISO rating of about 6. Which meant you could film outdoors in bright daylight. Indoors, you either had studio lights, which would fry the people inside the sub, or you might catch the glow of the light bulbs, but not much more. So at the end of the war, the film was all collected and developed and pretty much lost to history. It was archived in the National Archives. USS Cod, in the old days, as I used to tell people, was the least documented, least photographed submarine, and how far from the truth that actually was. In 1992, while working with the USS Pampanito crew at the National Archives in Washington, I stumbled across about 55 minutes of color film of Cod's 7th War Patrol. Films made by Norm Jensen, lost to time. So that was quite an exciting experience to see color movies of Cod. And in fact, we ordered VHS copies. We had those ready just hours before the crew reunion in 1992. And we were able to hit the guys at the banquet with a shortened reel of themselves aboard the Cod on the last patrol. And let me tell you, it wasn't a dry eye in the room. And even the crewmen were a little teary-eyed. But anyway, we thought we might be able to show the VHS tapes. Again, this is 1992. We thought we might be able to show the VHS tapes somewhere on the boat, but investigating the equipment to do that, museum VHS decks, and of course we're talking glass tube TVs, you could buy those combos, but they were hellaciously expensive. And we had other things, higher priority on our restoration. So that never happened. And I always wanted to get a VCR combo that you could show them. We did, in fact, get a VCR combo. We would show them to our friends and our crew, but not something we could show the public. Well, like everything, if you procrastinate long enough, the problem solves itself. VHS gave way to DVDs, and still the same problem. Big glass tube TV with a DVD player. The museum-grade equipment was extremely expensive, and we didn't do that. And then into the 21st century, we discovered we didn't have to because it was available on YouTube. Thanks to the Critical Pass company abstracting quite a bit of the color movies of the Navy in World War II. But let me bring you up to about 2016. That summer was very unusual because over the course of a month or so, We had half a dozen prominent families of cod crewmen come aboard. We had the granddaughter of our captain. We had George Sacco's daughter, our cook, of course, come aboard. And certainly we had the daughter of Kenny Beckman, our XO. And she and her family were just delighted to see Dad's submarine. When they got here to the crew berthing, but rather crew mess, she looked around and she said, where do you show the color movies of Dad's patrol, the last patrol on the boat? And I was a little embarrassed to say, we don't show them around. I mean, on board the boat. I told her we tell people to go to YouTube. And she says, well, I really think you ought to show them on the boat. And I said, well, you know, you're right. And certainly by 2016, technology had vastly improved, flat screens and everything. So she sat down right here at the table that our camera is sitting on while Evan sleeps in the next compartment. And she wrote us a rather generous check. And the funds were sufficient to basically acquire a small flat screen and the money to hide it so that when basically the people come through the boat don't see a modern flat screen. So right behind me is my best efforts to hide the flat screen. And of course, you know, yeah, they didn't have the Formica. It's painted, not painted gray, but it's gray Formica. But we put some things on it to make it look like a typical Navy storage cabinet. Accoutrements and things, and an old iron. Make it look like it's always been here. So this is something we're very proud of. I know our friends on battleships like Ryan, you guys have probably IMAX theaters. I know literally our friends with the with aircraft carriers have converted the forward centerline elevator well into ginormous auditoriums. Destroyers, and I know Shane up there in Buffalo, you guys probably have one of your mess halls that you can show movies in. Well, here we are on Cod with just a fleet submarine. So we have this small space, and we've gotten about 20 people in here, and this is where we show our color highlights of Cod's last war patrol. Now, it went into its sleep mode, so very often if it acts funny, we have to find a 15-year-old in the crowd to navigate the electronics for us. So the disc is loading. I know there are digital means to do it, but here we go. There's Lieutenant J.G. Smith in the South China Sea, catching some sun while he's junior deck watch. There's Frank Kimball. Now, what we have here is a disc of the entire raw 55 minutes. Oh, there's Laddie Pispecki and Mr. Atherton. I had the chance to know Laddie Pispecki at the reunions. Anyway, so this is a really important tool we have for tours. If conditions permit, we enjoy showing the movies of Cod on her last war patrol to our visitors. Now, very often this will create a backup, so we tell people, if you'd like to watch the videos, you know, sit down. We can accommodate 24, and we always try to keep a passage open so that people who are on the quick tour route can bypass it. Suffice to say, I do envy our surface ship friends with big spaces they can devote to theater experiences and perhaps even have popcorn. But, you know, perhaps someday we'll have a sleepover on board. Maybe we'll get Shane and our friends Keith Gill and Karen from the other Great Lakes boats. We'll have an overnight on Cod, and we'll be showing some home movies and some other things here on our deck, and we'll pop some popcorn. But anyway, a big thank you to the Beckman family for funding this. And I do want to point out that sometimes our crew has some not quite so educational material. The 1960s version theatrical movie of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Just as long as Dave, pay attention Dave, this doesn't go into our DVD player during visiting hours, because when I want to show people the highlights of Cod 7th Patrol, I don't want them looking at Frankie Avalon playing the saxophone and Barbara Eden's tush wiggling in front of the camera. As much as that's kind of nice to see, but it's not what we want to do on Cod. So again, the idea is we do need to hide this modern technology because most of the time this is shut down, and most of our visitors, sadly, are not in they don't have enough time to really devote to the 3-hour tour. So, by the way, a big thank you to my friend Rick Yurko, who built the cabinetry and designed it for us. So it is as unobtrusive as possible. By the way, it does kind of impinge on whoever's eating here at the table, but there's historic precedence for that, because in World War II, we had a rather large shelf right about here holding an RBO radio, and we're talking about a radio roughly the size of a medium-sized microwave. So the poor guy that was here wasn't exactly having a wonderful dining experience anyway because of an RBO. So this is definitely a tiny fraction of the space that an RBO would stick out. So we thought we'd share that with you, and we want to just cry and bemoan the fact that being a poor little fleet submarine with our tiny crew mess space, this is all we can devote to our theater. But of course, in World War II, while the Cod was in service, this was where the crew would show movies. We have the vintage projectors and the screen. That's a subject for a future program we'll be bringing to you soon. So remember, hit the like, subscribe, the notification bell, and we'll come back with some interesting content. Thank you very much.